Real Mystery, Real Consequences. I'm Asher, and today we're starting with the disappearance of Asha Degree, a 9-year-old who vanished one night in 2000. Despite thousands of tips, a nationwide search, her case still remains unsolved. Let's look at the timeline, the investigation, and all the questions that keep detectives and families searching for answers. In this case, there's going to be mentions of SA, and of course, murder and the disappearance of a child. If any of this makes you too uncomfortable, please click off, protect your mental health, and join me in the next one. It's also important to note that most things in this are alleged. Of course, all the search warrants and all of that are, as we know, fact, but anything else is speculation and alleged. Okay, let's set a timeline. On February 13th, 2000, the day before Asha's disappearance, she was with her father, Harold Degree, her mother, Aquila Degree, her brother, O'Brien Degree, her aunt, Shalonda Brown, and her grandmother. They all went to church, and then they went for lunch at Asha's aunt's house, which was just down the street from the Degrees' place. When they go home, Harold goes into work for his second job, while Aquila stays home with the kids. Asha's mom had a very distinct routine that she would normally do. She would bathe the kids before bed, but there was a power outage, so she couldn't do that. So instead, they just went to bed around 9, like normal. Somewhere in between 12:30 and 2:30 a.m., Harold gets home, and he checks on the kids, and he lays eyes on both of them asleep. Okay, then around 3:45 a.m. to 4:15 a.m., 2 truck drivers spot a girl matching Asha's description walking down Highway 18, around 1 mile away from her house. Mind you, at this time it was raining, and I think this is a good time to mention that Asha was terrified of thunderstorms, so she would not just be walking around. It's very unusual that Asha would be out during a thunderstorm, and she's afraid of the dark. So alone, a thunderstorm, and she's afraid of dogs. So alone, thunderstorm, dark, dogs. It just all doesn't really make sense. But she was in a long-sleeved white shirt and pants, which fit the clothing that was missing for her home. And there was also no shoes missing from the home when the Degrees checked, so that means that she was walking around barefoot the whole night. Aquila wakes up at 3:45. She gets up a little bit earlier than usual so she can give the kids a bath. When she goes to check the kids' room that they shared, she finds O'Brien sleeping under his covers, which is how he usually sleeps, and Asha is missing. They look throughout the house and they can't find her. They call relatives, checking in cars, checking in any place in the house that she could have hidden in, and they can't find her. So at 6:30, they call the cops, and they're like, hey, our daughter is missing. This is very out of the characteristics for her, and we can't find her anywhere. The cops show up around 6:40, and by 7 o'clock, they're using the K-9 unit to look for Asha Degree. The Degrees' friends and neighbors are all awake at this point, and they learn what's going on. Initially, investigators were looking for signs of forced entry, but whenever they looked, there was none. It looked like she ran away, and because all the doors were locked from the outside, so that's what all signs pointed to. But like I mentioned earlier, the Degrees stated that this was out of the characteristics for Asha, and she would not run away on her own. And we're going to jump a few days later, on February 17th. The police were searching Highway 18 because they got the tip from the 2 truck drivers that they saw the girl. And a woman living on a property like on the side of Highway 18 said that she didn't remember seeing a girl, but on February 15th, she went into her shed and found a Mickey Mouse hair tie, green markers, and a pencil. Of course, she gave the police permission to search, and they found candy wrappers that matched the sweets Asha's grandmother had given her on the 13th. Okay, so now we're going to jump 18 months. So this was August 3rd of 2001. A contractor was cleaning off some land on Highway 18, which was about 26 miles away from Asha's house in the opposite direction of where she was last seen walking. As he was clearing the land, he came across a trash bag. which he had not buried there. So he gets off his excavating equipment, opened the bag, and inside was another black trash bag. At this point, if you were a sane person, you would be thinking, hey, that's kind of weird. But apparently he didn't. So he opens that bag, because tampering with evidence is really nice. And inside was Asha's book bag with all of her contact information written on it. And for some reason, he didn't call the police. Because, you see a child's book bag buried in your stuff, double bagged, and you think, let me not call the police. So next morning, he mentions it to his wife. And, her being, sane, she calls the police because she remembers seeing something about a missing girl, and the police come and do a complete search of the entire plot of land. They find animal bones and men's khaki pants. And in the book bag itself was sent for federal testing. They released the information that they have collected. After the investigation, they said that they suspected foul play. It just irks me the wrong way. What if the wife didn't call the police? What if she, like her husband, just brushed it off like that? So now we're going to jump we're going to jump 13 years. So in 2014, the case started up again because of the name Donald Ferguson. He was arrested and his name was all over the news, eventually being linked to Asha's case. So why was his name on the news? What did he do? In 1990, a 7-year-old girl named Shalonda Poole went missing, and she was found one day after she disappeared behind an elementary school. She had been essayed, stabbed, and strangled to death by Donald. His DNA was traced and linked back to Shalonda's case. The reason for his arrest was obviously that. He was linked to Asha's case because he was in North Carolina at the time of her disappearance, which is literally the only reason. However, some people suspect him because of the ages were close between the two girls. Shalonda had been 7 at the time and Asha was 9. But also some people didn't understand because the crimes were so different. With Shalonda being groomed and him being a family friend and him working with them, while Asha, if he was connected, would have just been a crime of opportunity because he didn't know the family, had never seen, so it wouldn't make sense. But like we said, it isn't completely out of the question because he could have seen her walking and saw a perfectly good victim out of just random and decided, hey, this is my next person. This would later be debunked as it didn't have enough evidence to tie all of that together, so it wouldn't make sense because most people don't just change their crime style completely. So we're going to jump another year, and in 2015, the FBI came out and said that they were reinvestigating the case. And they also put up a $40,000 reward to anybody that has information about Asha's case that could help with their search of who took her, why they took her, if they have any information. And as far as I'm aware, that reward still stands. So we're going to jump another year. In 2016, a tip was given to the FBI, and it was unclear who gave it, where it came from, but they announced to the public that the night of Asha's disappearance, she was seen getting into, or more likely being pulled into, a either dark green early 70s Lincoln Continental Mark IV or a dark green early 70s Ford Thunderbird. She was seen getting into the car along Highway 18, the last place that she was also spotted by the truck drivers. The car was described having a little bit of rust around the wheels. Okay, so we're going to jump a few years. So this is early September 2024. The police has descended on some properties in Lincoln County and Cleveland County. And a distinctive older green car was seen being towed off the property. They also went to a property in Mecklenburg County. The property was owned by a couple, Roy and Connie Dedman. They have 3 kids. Their names were Lizzie, Sarah, and Anna Lee. They're all adults now, but when Asha went missing, Lizzie was 16, Sarah was 15, and Anna Lee was 13.
So wait, who are these girls to Asha?
So they didn't know Asha. The only evidence that we have that linked them to the Asha Degree case was Anna Lee's shirt was found in Asha's book bag, which I'm going to talk about more later. The Mecklenburg County was being owned and kept up and belonged to Anna Lee. The police were looking for specific physical evidence. This included kids' clothes, photos, and the Dedman's electronic devices, notebooks, and one of the daughter's journals/diaries. They also took photos and were allowed any records that went with a man named Russell Underhill. Russell Underhill was a tenant living at one of the family's home in the 2000s. Okay, with modern DNA testing, they were able to find some of Russell's DNA and Anna Lee's hair on the book bag. But the Dedmans didn't know the Degrees, so there's no reason that their daughter's hair or their tenant's DNA should be on Asha Degree's stuff at all. Russell was also in a healthcare facility that Roy's, the Dedman's father, owned. So sometimes Roy asked his oldest daughter, Lizzie, to transport the patients to a hospital. Their house was 6 minutes away, where Asha was last seen by the truck drivers. The road that she was last seen on was one of the more common ones that Lizzie would use when transporting patients for her dad. And the vehicle that she would use was, quote, unreliable. A older car. That's what it sounds like. Roy had 29 vehicles under his name, 3 of which are green. Back when Sarah was around 15, 16, she drove a car that was a dark green AMC Rambler that her dad had given her back in 1999. The search warrants included a picture of this car. That was a 1967 AMC Rambler. So a very old car that some might say was unreliable, which was registered to Roy, and an address that was searched by investigators when it was seized by law enforcement. It was parked next to a house that Roy was renting to a tenant. At the time, the home was occupied by Sarah, the middle child, but Sarah moved. The guy that lives there now, that had lived in that house for 5 years or so, was renting it from Roy. There was 3 bedrooms that were padlocked that he could not access. Law enforcement spoke with a woman, Laura Dedman, Roy's sister. She tells them that several years ago she saw Roy digging a hole on his property that the tenant was living in. Not a hole that you would put like a fence post in. It was a big hole that was like chest deep. The public has not been made aware of whether he was digging up something or burying something. As far as we know, nobody has ever been found. Now we're going to jump to February 13th, 2025. So, 3 more warrants have been permitted for the Dedman's family specifically to investigate them for felony obstruction of justice. They took all of the technology, looking for phone calls, iCloud data, emails, texts. When the search warrants were issued in September, Lizzie had spent a lot of time on her phone when everything was going on. Her sister called her, Roy called her, and Lizzie called Roy. It was just a lot of phone calls all in one day, and it wasn't looking good for them. Now, there's this guy named Thad Millington. He told sheriffs that in the mid-2000s he was drunk, and in his 20s he had been at a house party the night Asha vanished. He saw the eldest daughter, Lizzie, drunk and sobbing at said house party. He made claims saying that Lizzie admitted to Asha's murder. Her sister, Sarah, allegedly hit her on top of the head and allegedly just told her to shut up and be quiet. And allegedly they left after that. We do not know when the police got this information. We just know that they just now came out about it. It's important to remember that in this case, nothing has been solidified. Nobody has been arrested. There have been multiple searches, but this is still considered a cold case. So everything in here is alleged. Asha Degree's disappearance remains one of the most puzzling missing child cases in America. Every clue, every tip, and every question bring us closer, but the answers are still out there. What happened that night? Could someone have seen something that could prove everything and solve her disappearance today? If you have any information regarding this case, please call Cleveland County Sheriff's Office at 704-484-4822. 704-484-4822.